What's up, everybody? It's your girl Babbzy. I have a very different type of video blog for you today. This video is going to be touching on a very serious topic. So if you wanted to hear my opinion on some of the more serious things going on in the Caribbean, make sure you watch this video.
One more year on the blog of them. Then I go live to see Babbzy broke again. She get the wings them, so she no stuck again. Got the bad mind out of luck, but she have some hard work you put in. And them a block the door, never why you put a foot in. But what fi bip, happy bip. No man can't try take what happy weekend. So big up, big up, and all on up to get big up, chuck off. Babbzy, wait up that big and serious and a smiley face. No laugh, watch that then.
What's good, everybody? Your girl Babbzy here. I just want to put a disclaimer in before I get into this video. If you know you're sensitive or you know that, certain things upset you and bother you, I would really not watch this video. This video is going to be highlighting some problems that I've come across as a Caribbean blogger and some things that I really think that leaders and governments need to really start looking into. And if you're really not about that type of a conversation, just don't watch this video. So, being a Caribbean blogger, there are a lot of pros, there are a lot of cons, and there are a lot of things that I come across that you might not be able to find in documentation anywhere, or people are not talking about it, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I deal with every single Caribbean island, as well as places like Belize, Guyana, Suriname, Venezuela. There are a lot of people who follow me that come from these places, and I've been noticing this trend that I didn't even know existed until I became a video blogger. But let me give you a little stroll down memory lane so you'll understand what I'm talking about. When I was a child growing up in Canada, I'm talking 5-6 years of age, I always felt that I was getting a much inferior education to, people in the Caribbean. My father's friends would come by and they'd drink and they'd do their stuff, and they would always talk about how easy, the Canada school system is, and how, if they had to come to Barbados for a day and take a class, or go to St. Vincent and take a class, they would struggle and they would this and they would that. And it was like I always went through life feeling like, okay, I'm going to school in Canada, and the Canadian education system is nowhere comparable to the Caribbean education system. So I'm just going to be, second, third, fifth best, whatever it is, because that's how it is. And I'll tell you, I went through the majority of my early adult years feeling that way. And then this funny thing came about called, the internet, and then something called Facebook. And then I ended up becoming a blogger. And then I started to gain access to everybody, with an unfiltered type of way. And I'm kind of concerned about a few things. Now, again, as a child, my father and mother used to buy me, encyclopedias, atlases, globes, and stuff like that. And I always used to look at the statistics in the back section. So I'd look at the standard of living, these kinds of things. And one of the things, again, I always realized with the Caribbean would always have higher literacy rates than Canada. I would notice that, I'd see certain islands having a 99.8% literacy rate. And in my mind, I was like, wow, Caribbean people are so intelligent. Imagine, your entire island is 99.8% literate, and this and that. But when I became a blogger, I started to side-eye these stats. And the reason being is because I started to have to communicate online with people from every island. And when you're communicating on social media, you're communicating primarily through written, and on my end, verbal at times. So I was kind of like, are you sure your nation is 99.8% literate? Because it does not look like that based on the engagement that I'm having on my Facebook page on social media. So there was one particular incident that caused me to start digging. There was a year that I was supposed to go to St. Lucia Jazz Festival, and I didn't end up attending because R. Kelly was headlining the Jazz Festival. And I put up a status on Facebook where I stated, I will not be in attendance at the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. I choose not to support R. Kelly. My apologies. I will be visiting St. Lucia sometime soon. So I couldn't understand why in about 2 hours, this status was shared hundreds of times. And people were like, look what she's saying about St. Lucian people. Now, let me put in a disclaimer. I'm not saying that St. Lucian people are struggling with literacy any more than any other island. I'm saying to you that this was the point that made me start digging into this whole literacy rate thing, because I couldn't understand why so much people read that status and felt that I was talking about St. Lucian people when I didn't even mention them in the status. And that was one of the first times that my page came under attack. I had like 10 and 15 fake profiles made of me. Thank you for doing that, because that actually got me verified, motherfucker. But like, that was really the first time that I kind of started to get concerned. I'm like, there's something wrong when people read something that has to do with their island. And I don't know if these islands are wielding these literacy rates at the standard that they're saying. I decided to start digging into this and started to look into it. And my findings, people, were not good. One of the first things that I found was that a lot of islands report their literacy rate based on a subsection of their society. So most islands, or many islands, I should say, they take a cross section of 5-year-olds. So they look at the number of 5-year-olds in their society. And if there's 5,000 5-year-olds and 4,999 of them are in school, they deem their whole entire population as 99 point whatever percent literate. That is utter nonsense. It gets worse. Some islands don't even actually take a cross section of society. They look at the number of school children they have versus the number of schools they have, and if there's enough schools per square mile, they deem that area literate. Like, if you see how some of these literacy rates are calculated, you would be like, are you friggin' kidding me? Back in the 90s and 80s, people would have just been like, this country has a 99% literacy rate, the same way that I did. But how I see the written communication on social media, and I'm not just talking about Facebook, I'm talking about YouTube, I'm talking about Instagram, I'm talking about people's inability to comprehend what they read. I'm talking about a whole bunch of things combined. There's no way that some of these islands can have a 99 point whatever percent literacy rate. It's just impossible. So I realized too, in digging even more, that a lot of islands, a lot of children do not go to high school. A lot of children are not in school past the common entrance exam age. So if they take the common entrance exam and they fail, or they take the common entrance exam but they can't afford school, they don't attend school, which is a narrative that kind of starts to seem consistent now, because there's a lot of people that I've come to meet now from islands, and they're like, I left school when I was 11. I left school when I was 12 because my mom was poor and this and that. And I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean you left school at 12? You know what I'm saying? But this coincides now with the influx of like functionally illiterate people I'm seeing on social media. Now, this is by no means a disrespect. I know that people are going to be like, there's illiterate Canadians. Of course there are. There are illiterate Americans. Of course there are. The difference is that in Canada, when people don't go to school, they generally know that they're illiterate. Like they know they're uneducated. They know they're illiterate, and they tend to navigate at a different altitude. Now, I'm not saying that you're dumb if you didn't go to school. I'm not saying that, you're a stupid person, but I can see a very substantial gap in the way that a lot of people in the Caribbean communicate. And this, to me, is part of the reason why there's an influx in crime, because it doesn't matter if you have more jobs. If you have jobs where 5 CXCs are needed and these people don't have them, they're still gonna go out and rob and kill. I think that every single island needs to focus on making sure their citizens are educated. It's one thing that you can read cat, hat, ball, dog. But it's another thing when you are like, you're functionally illiterate. Like, you cannot navigate through the world as an adult from a literacy standpoint. And I see this every single day. It doesn't matter the island, the conversations. You just see how the people are replying. You see their inability to grasp the concept. You're seeing the inability for them to express their point of view without getting derogatory or disrespectful. The other day, it's funny, and this is another thing I want to talk about, like understanding what an assumption, an opinion, all these things are. My assumptions right now are based off evidence. I have enough evidence as Babbzy the blogger to say I don't believe some of these islands have 99% literacy rates. And I mean, I know you're going to say to me that, just because you see what's going on Facebook doesn't mean that that's what's going on in all of society. That's true. But I feel like comprehension and diction and writing and these types of things, that is a reflection. You cannot be a literate person and then just come on Facebook and act illiterate. Like, that doesn't make sense logically. Like, why would people do that? So if you could read and you could comprehend and you could write, you would read, comprehend, and write. You wouldn't pretend that you can't. So this is why I strongly believe there is a major problem. And, you know, on my channel, I have these battles all the time. And in the beginning, I used to feel like I could educate people, but I realized that there's this gravitation towards ignorance, and people are embracing, like, you know, stupidity and ignoramus. Like, that's what they want to be, and they enjoy having that title. You know, Caribbean people, when I was growing up, used to talk about, you know, how many CXCs they had, you know, what university they went to, you know, these kinds of things. They used to be proud about being educated. They used to be proud about, you know, going to a top school. And now, like, people are proud that they're ignorant, and it's like, well, if you can't test me, you think you could this, and it's just like, you can't read or write. You shouldn't be proud to be ignorant. Like, you're illiterate. That's not something to be proud of. That's actually something to be concerned about. And on top of that, I know it's not a lot of people's fault that they weren't able to finish school or they weren't able to get an education, but don't embrace it like it's something wonderful and great. And that's the difference between illiterate Canadians and illiterate Caribbean people. Again, I'll be saying something and somebody will come back and be like, oh, well, I don't think da 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 da. And I'll be like, I didn't say that in the video, but I think da 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 da. But I didn't say that in my video. Yeah, but blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, what part of you isn't hearing that that's not what I said? You're mad about a point that I didn't say. Like, why are you mad? I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? And then this thing about an opinion. I don't know if people just don't know what an opinion is. It's so baffling to me. For example, and I can't remember what the video that it was, but there were a lot of people from Jamaica coming on talking about how they don't understand why I'm talking about dance hall, because Jamaican people don't talk about soca and they don't do soca. And it was like a whole bunch of these comments coming, and some were getting trapped because people were cussing at me and stuff like that. And I'm like, what do you mean Jamaican people don't do soca? Like, Byron motherfucking Lee, Busy Signal, Beanie Man, Conscience, like Linky First competed in International Soca Monarch with Rock and Come In, Charlie Black. You want me to go on? I did a video on it. I'll link it. What do you mean Jamaican people don't do soca? So I link all these videos and all these songs, and then people were like, me not care. On my opinion still, come beat me. This is why there's so much violence. Come beat me. I just proved to you that your opinion is incorrect. And instead of you reflecting on that and being like, oh shit, those are the facts. Thank you, Babbzy. You talking about come beat me. Beat you for what? You're already beaten. You don't even have any intelligence. So what am I beating you for? It doesn't make sense for me to physically beat you if you're ignorant and unintelligent. And it's stuff like this I see all the time. Oh, I can think I can feel what I want. I can think what I want. I don't care. Like, you can think what you want, but if you're not formulating your opinion based off facts, you look dumb out here. So it's like you go to the doctor and this doctor tells you that you have this ailment, this, and this, and you go and you get a second opinion. And then the second doctor tells you, you know what, I agree with the first doctor, or you know what, I disagree with the first doctor. You can agree and disagree based on facts and evidence. But when you start saying things like Barbados is full of Batman, have you been to Barbados? No. So how do you know that? I've never seen Batman statistics be gathered at any kind of statistical demographical level in any Caribbean island. How do you know how many gays are in Barbados? And you've never been there. What are you talking about? And it's like, you're so proud to be ignorant. I don't care. Batman, like, how do you know that? Why are you repeating that? You don't even know if that's true or false. You've never even been there. How about you talk about a place you've been? And it's just so weird to me that in recent times, people are just gravitating to being ignorant. We can have dialogue and conversations and articulate ourselves about facts and evidence. But I don't know how to have conversations with some of you anymore, because it's like, if you notice, I don't talk about Vibes Cartel on my channel, because I realized a very long time ago that this is a very illogical conversation, and I just don't know how to do that. I don't know how to have an illogical conversation about something that requires facts and evidence and logic to discuss, like a criminal case, evidence in a case, testimonies in a case, all these kinds of things. I understand how to discuss that part of it. I understand how to discuss those things, but I don't understand how to discuss, Gaza Messiah and like, what are you talking about? What does Gaza have to do with the court case? Like, I don't understand. I don't know how to reply to you now. Oh, well, suck your mother. And okay, this is why everybody in society is beating up each other, because they can't express themselves, because they don't have the level of comprehension to express themselves. And there's people in our society in the Caribbean who have had really bad things happen to them, whether they've been raped, whether their parents neglected them, whether they were abused, whether they're, all kinds of things have happened to them. And the problem is they harbor these feelings as hatred, and they can't express themselves as to what their problem is. So everything in their way becomes a problem. And I feel like if we don't start at the ground zero in the Caribbean with education, comprehension, literacy, we cannot be putting out inaccurate statistics talking about how literate we are when these things just are not true. And I'm not picking on the Caribbean. I want better for the Caribbean. I understand the difference of being educated and not being educated. I was not educated at one point. When I was growing up in school, I was one of these people out here talking about Batman for dead and this and that. These are the things I used to talk about. These are the things that I used to say. But when I started to go to university and Batman are sitting beside me, and this is happening, and all kind of people and Jews are sitting there talking about they don't care about blacks, they just want what, like all the things that I witnessed in university made me realize, you know what, Babbzy, if you sit out here worrying about what Jews are doing and Chinese are doing and Batman are doing, you're never going to get nowhere in life. And the reason why many of us are stagnant and we're in this cycle is because we sit down and we spew and we perpetuate ignorance. Who cares about what Batman are doing? You don't have no food, you don't have nothing. And how you gonna get these things besides robbing and killing? Because that seems to be the only option right now, because you can't get a job, because the jobs that are out here, a lot of them you can't do because you're not at the level of reading, you're not at the level of writing, you're not at the level of comprehension to hold these kinds of jobs. Now, I want people to understand this. There are Caribbean people who are highly literate, highly intelligent, have great accomplished jobs. I have many friends, Mia Motley, Santia. These people are very educated, very intelligent people. I'm not saying that island people are dumb. I'm not saying that island people are uneducated. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm saying that there is a very large gap of people in every single island that are very illiterate and they did not finish school. And this is not something to be out here hiding behind, because I see illiterate people do this all the time. Oh, well, my country has a 99% literacy rate, but you are not literate. You can't read or write. You struggle to comprehend. And you're sitting here talking about your literacy rate. Canada doesn't have the highest literacy rate. Canada has a literacy rate, like sometimes it fluctuates. There are a lot of people who drop out of high school in Canada. Canada uses 16-year-olds to deem their literacy. And they take a cross-section of, the English courses that they're doing at school, and they look at the individuals from that type of a level. You can't go and say there's 15 schools for every square mile. That means our country is literate. Like, that is not an accurate way to report literacy. You have to actually go and find out if these people are literate. You're calculating your literacy based on how much 5-year-olds are in school when people are leaving school when they're 11 and 12 because they can't afford it. And again, there are people who can't read and write because they basically weren't given the opportunity to. There are people who cannot read and write because they choose not to. And I'm telling you, I travel to all the islands, and every time I'm on a flight to the island, there's some person who cannot read the immigration form to fill it out. I don't get those questions when I'm flying to New York, or when I'm flying to Toronto, or when I'm flying to Miami. But best believe when I'm flying to an island, somebody on that flight that's sitting near me is going to ask for help to how to fill out their immigration form. These are basic things. These are basic things. And it's sometimes people who are 18 and 17 years old that need help. And then it's sometimes people in their 50s and 60s. So it's a very broad spectrum of people who can't even fill out immigration forms. You can't thrive in this day's society and you can't even comprehend a basic immigration form. It's asking you your name and your date of birth and your passport number. There's nothing complicated on that form. And the fact that every time I'm flying, I have to help people fill it out is weird to me. Like, That's not the Caribbean that I grew up as a child thinking, that every single person was getting the best education in the world. And I'm not comparing educations. I'm not saying that a Canadian education is better than a Caribbean one. I'm saying to you that as a child, I felt inferior to the Caribbean based on how I used to hear people talking and how people used to talk about how much CXCs they had and stuff like that. Those conversations have changed. People are talking about how much man them tech, how much this and that. And I say this all the time. There are ignorant people all over the world, but their situations are all different. There are ignorant people in America. There are ignorant black people in America. The difference with them is when they come on social media all day and they can't read and they can't write. When the month ends, they go to some welfare office and they collect food stamps and they collect rent money and they get their assistance. The same thing in Canada. There's no safety net in the Caribbean for people who cannot read and cannot write and come on social media all day looking for likes and acting the fucking fool. And I truly believe that some leaders in the nation, I mean, my friend Santia Bradshaw, she just got diagnosed with breast cancer actually. She's the Minister of Education in Barbados. And, you know, I've always been trying to steer away from this kind of thing, but if there's assistance that's needed in these islands, I can talk to Santia and talk about what is it that, you know, we need to improve on and what's happening out here, because I'm telling you, this is not good. You cannot be illiterate or mildly illiterate in 2018 and going forward. You're going to get left back. You know, those farming jobs and those kinds of jobs, they don't exist the way that they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. You know, these kinds of jobs, even if you want to be a mechanic, you have to get certifications. You know what I mean? The people that work at BMW, these guys have to go to courses all the time. If you cannot read and cannot write, you cannot be a mechanic. If you cannot read and cannot write, you cannot get certification to be a hairdresser, to be a nail technician, to be a barber. These are things now that are calling for education and calling for you to be literate. And if you are just basically skimming by it and you can read cat, hat, and ball, you're going to get left back. And when you get left back, people might be like, well, it's you and it's not me. It's going to be you and it's going to be all of us, because when that person can't get a job and they need to survive, they're coming to your door to rob and kill you, to take your things from you so they can survive. That's how this thing goes. So how bad the person at the lowest in our society is living is going to dictate how the person at the highest is going to live. And enough of our nations, we're being held hostage because the ignoramus is growing and growing and growing. And a lot of people are fleeing. A lot of people can't go back because these people have no answer. And a lot of the answers that they're not getting is because they cannot go into a normal workforce and work like a normal citizen. So like I said, this video is out of love. I know a lot of you are going to be like, shut the fuck up. You don't know what the fuck you talking about. Blah, 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 blah. You're just going to support the fact that you cannot interact without being ignorant because you don't know how to. If you knew how to interact with somebody on any intellectual level, you would not be talking about suck out your this and this and that for people's opinions and difference of opinions. I'm telling you, I was there. I know what's going on. When I was not as educated as I am now and exposed as I am now, I was the one ringleading the Kill Batman conversation. That used to be my topic of every morning when I was 15 and 16, because that's how I thought things were supposed to go. And I was wrong. So I'm telling you this right now. If we want to take back our societies and make sure that we're safe and make sure that we don't have a bunch of friggin' people and hoodlums running around, well, we have to start where the problem is. The problem is the education. And if you're not educated, you cannot get a proper job. And that's just what it is. It doesn't matter how many jobs you create. If the people can't do them, it doesn't make sense creating them. So I think every single Caribbean island over the next, how many years needs to focus on the education system. The problem with a lot of these leaders, and I'm going to give you an inside talk right now, is that they need you to be ignorant. They thrive on your ignorance because that's how they get you to go and put on their party colors and jump up in the road with tambourines like like some fools and they keep you under manners while they collect the money and they live good and you are out here suffering. The dumber you are, the easier you are to control. The reason why people don't like me is because they cannot control me. They cannot rub shit in my mouth and come and tell me it's gospel and I'm going to take it. I know when you're talking crap. I know when you're talking ignorance, and I'm not going to tolerate that. And that is why people don't like me. People like people who don't know nothing and you can just come and tell them, hey, guess what? If I heard that this person's giving out jobs, all you got to do is go and put up this and do this, and you jump up without even thinking about what it is that you're supposed to be doing and if this is true or if this is false. You're out here attacking people for religion. You're out here attacking people for political beliefs. That is ignorant. That is ignorance. That is what ignorant people do. People that are articulate and understand life don't do that. There's no need to do that. So the dumber you are, the easier it is for the top people in y'all communities to collect all the money while you get none. So you can make a decision. If you want to make improvements in society, focus on education. If you want to keep things the way they are and have people robbing and killing and shooting, then leave things the way that they are. That's my advice to everybody. So I don't know how you guys feel about this video. If it gets out of hand, I might disable the comments because you know how this thing goes. As I said, this is not one particular island that has this problem. It's all of them. Some islands have it worse than others, but I'm telling you, this embracing of ignorance in the Caribbean has got to stop. It's not what Caribbean people were about. Caribbean people used to be proud of, where they came from, what education they had, where they went to school. They were never proud about how much man they take and who they robbing and how much they pussy getting for them. Like, this kind of thing isn't going to get you nowhere. The next time you have some time on your hands, go and look at the Forbes list and see how the richest people in the world are doing, and none of them are on there selling pussy. None of them are on there teching man and doing whatever. They're on Forbes because they're doing things that are generating money for them. And take a look at the black people like LeBron James and these people who have left school early to go to the NBA, or Oprah Winfrey. All of them are going back to school. Rihanna. Black people that are getting their money in America are going back to school because they understand the importance of having an education, how important it is to be literate, to have strong comprehension, and to be able to interact and navigate with articulate people in society. This is very important, and I need you guys to understand that. So let me know in the comments below what you think, any suggestions, if you have any, points of contacts you want to give me so that you can, someone else want to take this up and say, you know what, I want to do a thesis on this, or I want to do some more research on it, do it. But I'm telling you, you can't look at 5-year-olds in your society and deem your society illiterate. That's friggin' absurd. And this is not being an informer and ratting out things. This is about looking at a very big problem that's causing ramifications all over and understanding that it's time to make a change and improve the conditions for Caribbean people. And being out here not being able to navigate and articulate yourself properly is not somewhere you want to be. You're going to get left back. And when these people get left back, they gonna come for the people going forward. And we all crabs in a barrel, and none of us ain't gonna get nowhere. So that's my advice to you. Mwah. Talk to you guys soon. If you want me to do another video like this, let me know in the comments below. I'm gone. Bye.